speaker. Let me introduce her and say very few words about Karolina. She is based in Poland. She has a degree in applied linguistics, and she is an English language teacher and an ELT trainer. And as far as I know, Karolina has started teaching career while still being a student, and now she works. She also teaches English to all proficiency levels and all age groups, and she also trains the teachers. Karolina, can you hear us? Karolina, can you hear us? Well, we still have 5 minutes. Karolina is about to join. Знову перейду на українську. Я бачу, що кілька колег пишуть, що не отримали сертифікат за 11 березня. Я хочу сказати, що я особисто відправляла ці сертифікати на цьому тижні. Якщо ви не отримали сертифікат, це може означати дві речі. Або мій лист потрапив у папку спам, тож я рекомендую перевірити цю папку, або ви вказали неправильну електронну адресу, і саме тому ви і не змогли отримати цей сертифікат. Ще раз, сертифікати за 11 березня я особисто відправляла всім тим, хто був на вебінарі на цьому тижні. Стосовно сьогоднішніх сертифікатів, кажу зараз і ще раз повторю в кінці нашого вебінару. Сертифікати за сьогоднішній вебінар вам також надійдуть на електронну пошту, яку ви вказували, коли ви зараз заходили на вебінар. Ви отримаєте їх протягом 3 днів на електронну адресу. It seems to me that Karolina is already here.
Hello.
Hi, Karolina. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. The question is if you can hear me.
Yeah, we do hear you. The floor is yours. I said everything I wanted to say and tried to introduce you very briefly, so we are ready to start.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's nice to be here with you today. Hello, everyone. The topic for today is a gateway to successful learning, vocabulary and grammar in context. And in basically in the next 60 minutes, I would like to focus on the following, and this is my agenda. First, we're going to have a short warm-up, and you will see what it is in a moment. Then I'm going to talk about 3 dimensions of language knowledge, or if you prefer, 3 dimensions of language learning. This is actually something that a colleague of mine, Marta Roszinska, introduced to you a while ago. At least this is what I've been told. Then we are going to look at different context-based language learning ideas. I want to show you what context means for me and how I understand what context really is. I will aim to show you why I think it is so important, why I think context is so important. And this will also be followed by pedagogical reasons. So in other words, again, I will try to sum up why this is so important. And this first part of the webinar will be kind of illustrated. The points that I want to make will be illustrated with the examples from Gateway B1 and Gateway B1 Plus. So I don't hear. Okay, someone says they can't hear. No video. Just can you hear me? Maybe one more question. If you can type here, yes. Okay, thank you. Okay. I just kind of spotted one person saying that there's something wrong, and I got worried for a moment. Okay, anyway, coming back to the topic. Like I said, the main points in this webinar are going to be illustrated with different examples from Gateway. And now, perhaps I should ask you this question. Do you use any of these two course books, either Gateway B1 or Gateway B1 Plus? Yes, no, okay, no, okay, yes, no, yeah. Okay, we've got a mixture, I can see. Plus, minus, okay, thank you very much for that response. So, I would like you to look at, okay, perhaps let's put it this way. If you are using any of the Gateway books already, today I invite you to kind of look behind the scenes. I will kind of reveal to you why the course book or the order of activities is designed the way it is. If not, however, well, I'm glad to be introducing this book to you. And what comes at the very end is a bank of activities. These will be, this last part of the webinar will be devoted to different activities, well, regardless of what kind of course book you're using. So I will show you a bank of generic ideas, something that you can use in any course book, any level, maybe not any level, we are still sticking to B1 and B1 Plus, but any group of students, any course book, so maybe even slightly different age groups. Okay, then, let us start. The first thing that I have a task for you as a warm-up. All right, the warm-up that I have for you is the following. Could you think, you don't need to write it, just think of a short story with these 5 words. As you can see, all of these words, well, they do not really match. They are completely random words. If you please, so that most probably the story that you make will be a little bit silly. And if you want to make a silly story, please feel free to do it. I will now stop talking for 2 or 3 minutes. For 2 minutes, I think should be enough. And I'd like you to think about a story with the words rabbit, tree, pencil, homework, and banana. You don't need to write it. It's enough to say it in your mind or whisper it. Okay, Miss Nina here is kind of on the right track. Now, if you're talking about the rabbit eating banana on the tree while it's while doing his homework with the pencil, try to visualize it at the same time. Okay. 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 3 little rabbits. This is a nice one. This starts in a nice way. 3 little rabbits. Okay. It's a banana on a tree. Homework and pencil is missing then. Eating banana and doing their homework with the pencil. Okay, guys. I hope that everybody has their own silly little story in their minds. So let us begin. Point number 1, something that I'd like to start with today. are the 3 dimensions of language learning. Like I said, I've been told that a few months ago, a colleague of mine, Marta Rosińska, was doing a webinar also for the teachers of Ukraine, underlying what it means to know language, okay? And now, be it vocabulary, so if we're talking about individual words or phrases, or maybe, or even, and also grammar, so different forms, different structures, there are 3 things that a student knows or can know or should know. First of all, it's the form, so they have to know the letters, how the auxiliary is combined with the verb, so was playing as opposed to played or will play. These are different forms, right? Either grammatical or lexical. They also need to know the meaning, because obviously they need to know what these mean. What's the difference between I played as opposed to I will play, right? Or what's the difference in meaning, I don't know, between a flower and the grass, for instance, okay? But I would say that this is not enough. As you can see, the word use here is highlighted, because I believe that it is only the use, which is the 3rd element of knowing a language. So in other words, being able to use it in context, in conversation, in real life, will tell you whether the student actually knows this word, or whether the student actually understands, or if the student has actually a kind of internalized or mastered that particular language item. Let me show you what I mean by that. Here it is. It is going to be a joke, something that I once found on online, but I think that it illustrates my point very well. Assuming that the student knows knows 2 words, 2 synonymous words, complete and finished. They are synonyms. He or she knows the form, they know the meaning. The meaning is more or less the same, but it is only knowing how to use it will show you if he or she understands it. And the use is rather peculiar. Let's have a look at this, and I'll give you a moment to read this in silence. So look at this one. No English dictionary has been able to explain the difference between the 2 words, complete and finished. Some people say there is no difference, but there is. When you marry the right woman, you're complete. When you marry the wrong woman, you're finished. And if you marry a wife who likes shopping, you are completely finished. Which, on the one hand, this is a joke, but it proves one very important thing. You have to know or have to be able to use the words in context. When is it that you're complete? When is it that you're finished? Obviously, it's a joke, but I have one more proof, one more piece of evidence for you, saying that it is actually the use that is extremely important. Have a look at this one. Is this sentence correct? How long are you here for? Is this sentence correct? Why do you say no? What's wrong with this sentence? Look, what happens is that how long are you here for means how long are you going? Present perfect. This is but you know what? These are the fact that you answered that present perfect is missing. This is guys, the teachers of English talking. Normally, this sentence for non-teachers, for native speakers of English means how long are you going to stay here? It is only the teacher of English who can detect that, that should be present perfect here, right? Obviously, but look, if you look on the sentence alone, it's correct. How long are you here for? I'm going to stay for 2 weeks, right? How long are you here for? I'm here for another week, which means I'm staying for another week. It is only the wrong use that defines, or the usage that defines what you've just said, this is like that I say, this is, you know, this is the instinct of a teacher of English. Look at this one. Peter says, how long are you here for? Amira says, 2 years. What? You're already here for 2 years? No, I came yesterday. So, no, oh, yesterday. No, last week. I mean, like, I came last week. So, as you can see, right, how long are you here for? The very sentence alone is correct, but if you use it in this context, it's obviously wrong. Like I said, this is not a good, perhaps I should have envisaged that teachers of English will automatically detect what I'm going to talk about, but my bad, I guess. Anyway, these two examples, one coming from the area of vocabulary, one coming from the area of grammar, proves that it is actually the use which, to be honest, I consider the most important in these three, out of these three elements, okay? Because the form is something that we can learn by heart. The meaning is something that we can also learn by heart, but it is actually the language use, vocabulary use, and grammar use that will help us communicate. And now let me show you this visual, which I have found on Real Grammar, which actually shows why this use or usage is so important. The first circle is the one of a speaker. The speaker has a meaning in mind. He or she has to choose what kind of form to use. I want to say, okay, I finished, right? This is what I want to say. So then I have to think about how to say it and then use it correctly. And mind you that the use, if you can look at this photo, is what the listener or the recipient of this message experience. So mind you that kind of the use is like a touching point. This is where the communication takes place. This is where understanding takes place. Okay. Okay. So having said that, I hope that I managed to prove my point that yes, the use is very important, in that it's a very important dimension of both language knowledge, but also then it would imply that it's very important in language teaching or language learning. Okay, I need to keep track of time. Okay, and the way I see it, how we can achieve it, how we can practice the use, so this third element, is through context. Now, let me tell you why I believe that context matters so far. Here it is. I wanted to show to you visually. Language forms, either words or grammar structures, so verbs in different tenses, for instance, right? It's like a brick. If it's in isolation, it's not going to help anyone. You need to put them together to build something. Okay, the brick alone means nothing or is nothing. Okay, the brick alone means nothing. The language knowledge is a wall. Okay, so you need to combine those and put them in the context. One kind of structure next to another, one word next to another. Put one brick, that is one sentence, one word, let's say, into a line of bricks, that is the context of a sentence. Okay, so this is how I see it. This is why I believe, this is what I wanted to talk to you about context in the first place. Now, let me tell you a few words about what this context-based language learning will mean. Okay, and when I tell you, okay, context-based language learning, what kind of context comes to your mind? The context of what? The context, what is context? Text, good. Words. Situations, good. Text, story, okay. Okay, conversation, very good. This is actually on my list. The meaning, dialogues, very good. Information, language situation. Exactly. So I think that all of the answers, all of the ideas that I'm going to talk about have just, everything that is surrounding, okay, has just appeared here in the chat box. Let me now show you what I believe context actually is. I believe it's multi-faceted, it's multi-layered. Context has a number of different, or the word context kind of is an umbrella term for many different things. First of all, and that's, I would say, the most obvious thing that comes to our minds is the context of a sentence. You teach students words and you ask them to put them in the context of a sentence, one sentence, two sentences, okay? We've got sentences, but context would also refer, and that's the way I see it, a phrase or a collocation, okay? Students have to be able to say whether you say that you make a mistake or you do a mistake. This is also a tiny and minor, but it's still a context, right? You put it into a phrase, something that surrounds the word. One of you has put it into the chat box, the context of a conversation. So when two students talk to one another. And then the context of speech in which one person speaks longer, and the context of writing. So putting the words and the phrases that you know into a piece of writing, be it an essay, a story, a description, whatever this is. And now I would like to show you what this actually means, what all of these types of contexts actually mean on the basis of different activities, and why are these activities so important? What I see, what kind of value, what advantages and benefits I see in them. Okay, let us start with the context of a sentence. Okay, I've chosen this short vocabulary explanation from Gateway B1 Plus, in which presents students with different adjectives, with the adjectives with ing and ed ending. Okay, read the sentences and answer the questions. Stephen Wiltshire picture was amazing, and I was amazed when I saw the picture. As you can figure out, there will be other adjectives to follow, like inspired, inspiring, bored, boring, interested, interesting, something that students have a tendency to get wrong, let's face it. And now, I hope that you will amazing, and so on. I hope that you will agree with me that it is only in the context of a sentence that you can know whether a student understands the difference or not. Okay, so they can tell you, they can recite a list of these words: amazed, amazing, interested, interesting, bored, boring, embarrassed, embarrassing, and whatnot. But if you don't ask them, unless you ask students to put these words in context, like for instance here in this example, and have a look at exercise number 4, then you're not going to know whether they actually understand it or not. And I'd like to show you a certain flow of activities. Mind you that we talked about individual words or phrases, then context of a sentence, then a context of a conversation, then free speaking. Look at how these activities are designed. First, students get to know the words, then choose the correct alternative, and they choose between inspired, inspiring, disgusted, disgusting, tired, tiring, and so on. Exercise 5A says prepare things to say about the topics below. 2 people you think are inspiring, 2 things you think are depressing, a moment in life when you were surprised, and so on. So as you can see, as the lesson goes along, students kind of are expected to use those target items in a more in a freer way. Okay, so you start with the manipulation of forms in the context of a sentence, but then this context grows. So now use them in speaking, then use them in a conversation with your friend, and so on. Okay, the same will go for basically any vocabulary set. Could you use these in the sentence? English is my favorite subject, for instance. You can write an essay, send me an essay, okay? But with certain words, such as here, now we are kind of touching upon the context of a phrase. In other words, which of these things do you do and which of these things do you make? And this is something that will appear here in exercise 7. We do English, you can do an exam, you do an exercise, you do homework, but you make a mistake. Exactly. Okay. So this is, mind you, these words are put into the context of a sentence, but before that happens, students put these in the context of a phrase, a collocation, something smaller. Okay. As you can see here, which leads us to our next point on the list, the context of a phrase or the context of a collocation. So the words that immediately precede or follow that particular word. Okay, so I have a question for you. What do these adjectives have in common? What do these adjectives have in common? Good, bored, worried, tired, afraid, responsible, similar, different, pleased. They describe people, personality, okay, description, person, feeling. Think about linguistically. I'll give you a hint. They've got some, not in terms of meaning, but instead of the language. What comes after them? They need preposition. Got it. Tatiana, I guess, wrote that for the first preposition. Okay, exactly. They are all followed by prepositions. Okay. So look at this. I want to show you an activity now, actually a sequence of activities in which first students put a set of adjectives in the context of a phrase, and then later on in the context of a sentence. Have a look at this one. So first, let me go back for a moment. Good, at, bored, with, worried, about, tired, of, afraid of, and so on. And then the next question will tell you, complete the question with the correct prepositions. Are you good at, and I'd like to show you, read out a few of these sentences, just to draw your attention to one important aspect of this exercise. Are you good at maths? Are you interested in music? Are you aware of the latest fashion? Are you tired of people talking about football? Are you pleased with your progress in English this year? Look at this. All of these sentences are made in such a way that the next natural step is for students to include them in a conversation. So as you can see, the context of a phrase, the context of a sentence, and the context of conversation. And this is the flow that I want to show you, that I wanted to show you. And in fact, if that's basically a comment to those of you who are already using Gateway, this is how it's organized. You've got this flow of context from the context of a phrase or the context of an expression, to the context of a sentence, to a context of a conversation, and then a little bit of free practice at the end. So this leads us to the third type of context, which is the context of a conversation. Now, I believe that for the context of a conversation to make sense and to work, it has to be based on personalization. I mean, if you want students to use the target items, be it vocabulary and grammar, in a conversation, well, that conversation has to be about the students themselves, because otherwise they won't be interested. They won't be interested in the conversation at all. Just think about what do you talk about with your friends in Ukrainian in your everyday life. What's new with you? What happened? What you ate in the morning? What's your plans for the weekend? And so on. But you talk about yourself. And we need to give students the same kind of opportunity, okay? But personalization is important from the teacher's perspective for two more reasons. First of all, and they are all they are both written here. First of all, when students use the target structures to exchange information about each other, then first of all, we make sure there is always some kind of information gap. And the information gap encourages people to talk in the first place. Okay, if you saw this presentation, let me show you how information gap works. If you saw this presentation beforehand with all the comments that I'm all with all my comments, you wouldn't join this webinar. You most probably wanted to join this webinar because there is some kind of information gap. I wanted to say something and you didn't know what I wanted to say. So this is information gap. And this is basically what drives people to speak and listen in daily lives. But and that's one reason for using personalization. Another one is relevance. Our brains, and this is something we know from neurodidactics, works in such a way that, well, our brains are very selfish, okay? You have to convince the brain, right, that what it is supposed to learn is actually relevant and useful for that particular person, okay? So while including this personalization, you show other students that this is relevance. You show kind of personal relevance, and you encourage students to speak. Again, let me show you how it works on the basis of an activity from Gateway B1. This is grammar activity. It says complete the sentences with information about you. Use the correct form of the present perfect and the time expression. So I have known my English teacher for something. I have lived in this area since, I don't know, 2005. I have had this watch for something. And mind you that the sentences are very personal and they give students an idea of what to talk about later on. Guess what your partner's answers are, and then talk about them and so on. Okay, so this context of a conversation will work if it's personalized. Okay, however, that's not the end to the story. I have this quote by Penny Eyre, which will take us one step further, showing that this the context of a sentence, the context of a phrase or expression, the context of a conversation is not enough. The fact that students can do a grammar exercise, and this is all something that we have shown so far, and this is about grammar, but it will also be true for vocabulary. The fact that students can do a grammar exercise perfectly is no guarantee that they will then be able to use the target feature in their own speech and writing. They need practice in expressing their own ideas with the grammar or vocabulary for that matter. In other words, students need some free practice, that is, let them speak as much as you want and let them write as much as you want using certain target structures. Someone wrote that might be a problem, but I'll show you how to do it to kind of encourage students. It's difficult for students, but I will show you how to do it in a moment. Controlled practice, very nice. This is so far we I would say that, referring to Irina's controlled practice, the sentence, phrase, and conversation will be more of a controlled practice. That speech and writing I would call free practice. Okay, so having said that, I have something to show you. This is a vocabulary lesson from the introductory lesson from Unit 2, Gateway B1, and there is a sequence of activities about crimes and criminals. First, students put the words into definitions. Then they write the missing words here. They listen. They do some listening activity. Then they fill in some more definitions. And there is this one tiny exercise 7 at the end of the page. But be honest with me, what normally happens with this idea, with this project? What normally happens with this activity? Oh, by the way, how long is this is a question that I've got to ask. How long is a lesson in Ukrainian schools, like an average lesson? 45. So that's okay. 45. It's 45. So assuming that you've got 45 minutes for this lesson, what happens to exercise 7? But be honest, please. Skip it. That's the answer that I was waiting for. Let's face it, in 80% of cases, we're going to skip it because there's no time to do it. Yet, let me show you what the activity is. No time to do it. It should be for free practice. This activity is, I would say, where the most important learning comes. Let's have a look at the activity. Work with your partner. Ask and answer this question. Would you like to do a detective work? Why not? And this is when the students have to process and reprocess the words from the entire lesson again. Okay? They don't listen to each other, no time. So perhaps, and this is something that make a dialogue, they could speak during the lesson. Look, what I would do, assuming that 45 minutes is not enough for me, I would probably go for something called flipped classroom. Ask students to do exercises, I don't know, 1 and 5 at home, so that in the classroom we only check them, we kind of review something that they have done at home, and do this particular exercise in the class. Okay, because I believe that this is something that makes students think about the target language more than anything else. Another idea, if the course book that you're using does not offer such an opportunity, it's very easy to come up with. Look at this one. Without any preparation, it's just, no need for extra materials. Ask students to do this. Describe a crime that you witnessed. Use at least 6 words from the lesson. We can do exercise 7 next class after repeating the grammar. Very nice, but it's still, I would say, it's very important for this exercise to be done in the classroom with your supervision. Because, well, let's face it, we all know what happens to homework. It's either done or not. Okay, so something, an exercise, or I'm not sure what a colleague of mine here told you about me, but I'm also an author and I write books. And this is one of my favorite activities to write. At the end of the lesson, write a short story with 5 words from the lesson. Write a short dialogue using 7 words from the lesson. Okay? So I believe that this is such an activity at the end of the lesson has a huge educational value. Okay, then. Another example of the same kind of activity, going over the material from, this time not the lesson but the entire unit. This is a perfect activity or perfect procedure for the for revision. This is unit 7 in Gateway B1 is about sport, right? As you can see, it's got sport, sports venues, equipment. The grammar is for defining and non-defining relative clause. So what I would tell my students is this: talk about a sport that you like. In your speech, use 1 defining relative clause, 1 non-defining relative clause, 1 negative sentence in present perfect. It's something that goes back to the previous unit. 3 verbs connected with physical activity, 2 names of sports disciplines, and you can continue 3 adjectives, 2 words connected with sports equipment, or you can stop here. This is entirely up to you. The number of points to be included in this speech is entirely up to you. Also depending on the level of proficiency of your students. But this exercise is easily done, easily implemented, and I believe it really helps students remember the ideas, the words and the grammar from the lesson really well. Okay, then. Why do I believe that all of these are so helpful and so important? So important in the course. Why is this context so important? Here are my reasons. First of all, I'm a big fan of teaching in context because language comes in chunks. We do not use in our minds, the words are not stored individually in isolation. What we've got in our minds is a network of phrases and expressions. Language is language use, and conversation and communication is based on language chunks, right? In other words, it's not that you say, what would you do if you were me? No, you say, what would you do is chunk number one if you were me, chunk number two. Okay, so this helps because language comes in chunks, and therefore I believe it should be taught and learned in chunks as well, and context-based learning and teaching enables us to do so. The second reason, and again, I believe, let me refer to the webinar that a friend of mine did for you a while ago. Use it or lose it, right? If we don't put something to use, we simply forget it. One of the theories of forgetting, which is called the attrition theory, says that if you don't activate your knowledge, you're not going to remember it. The knowledge is gone after a while. Now, presenting students or giving students this context-based practice is also important because it changes the knowledge about into the knowledge how. At the end of the day, mind you, we are not teaching knowledge or facts. We are developing a skill. So it's not like we are not history teachers. We can't tell students to learn a set of dates by heart or a set of names by heart, right? We have to develop certain skill. And it is this context use or contextual learning that helps students change the knowledge learn about into knowledge how. So let me show you, this is it. The knowledge about is, okay, when the learner thinks, okay, I need second conditional, so after I need if I, then were you, so because I need past simple, then what would you do would, because this is knowledge about. The knowledge how is the following: what would you do if you were me? Okay, if I wouldn't do that if I were you, because these are two separate chunks. And last but not least, I would say, it's the last on my list, but I would say in terms of importance, I should have put it in place number one. It's difficult. It challenges students. And the more challenging a task is, the more memorable the learning becomes. If students are asked to do something easy and easy and easy and easy and easy, they just do one exercise after another, after another, after another, no learning takes place. It is only the challenge that makes their brains make some kind of effort, right? It's difficult. Mind you that it's a lot more difficult to put the words into the context of a sentence than to just write the words and match them with, with the meaning or mother tongue equivalents. Okay, but it is more difficult, and therefore help students remember those words. So these are my reasons. Let me just look at the time. Should be okay. And now what we are left with really is activities. Now the activities that I want to show you are, I have included a few examples from Gateway as well, but all of the activities that I have here are, like I said, generic. So you can use them whenever, with whichever course book you actually, but the challenge shouldn't be over there. Of course it cannot. The idea for the activities is the following: challenging, but manageable. Okay, challenging but manageable. Okay, this would be the idea. So it's difficult, but it can still be done. Not all the students like to cope with difficulties. I would say so, but at the end of the day, it's always the teacher who knows better. And if we know that a little bit of challenge won't do them any harm, just on the contrary, will actually help them learn the material a bit more, then I think I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. Okay, then let's start with this bank of activities. And again, I want to show you a few groups how to practice different words in the context of a sentence, in the context of a phrase, in conversation, and then in free speech and free writing. Okay. Obviously, let's start with this. Like the order is still the same as we had at the previous part of the webinar. So let us start with sentence-based practice. let's face it, the most obvious form of which will be fill the gaps activities. Okay. This activity is absolutely my favorite. I'm not sure whether the course book that you use does or introduces this kind of activities. Let me show you. Children often watch cartoons. Exactly. Can you recommend a good documentary? I've seen How to Make Pizza in it trains spelling. Very good. It trains spelling documentary cookery program. And do you watch or do you change channels? Do you watch commercials? Exactly. Do you want to watch commercials or do you change channels? Now, why is it that I believe that this activity is better than just one gap? For two reasons. First of all, one reason really. First of all, when students see something like this, or when the brain sees something like that, it automatically sees, oh, it's a puzzle. And generally, students' brains and students themselves react a lot better to puzzles than a language task. Okay? Not only, of course, other linguistic benefits such as, yes, it helps students with the spelling. This actually provides some extra either help or challenge. And it's a game for them. Very nice. I think Elena wrote that. This is like a game. It's kind of, okay, let's do the crossword puzzle. It's something like this. This is how the students' minds react to an exercise like this. Now, you will probably say at this point that, well, in order to prepare an activity like this, well, it's kind of time consuming. And then also you need to spend a little bit of time before the lesson to make extra copies and so on and so forth. But my recommendation, ask students to write such activities for one another. Now, how do we do that? You take take the course book that you're working with, and so that students can, it's best to be done with students, or when students open their books and they have something to use. It's not like you tell them, okay, now come up with 10 different sentences. Not necessarily, right? Write the sentences from that particular book. The extra benefit is that students process the language material twice. First, when they write the activity. So first they have to think about, look for different sentences or come up with a sentence to put the words in the context. And then the next student who has to do the activity has to, do it or process the language again. Okay, so it's kind of double benefit. First, you process the language material when you make the activity for your friend, and then you process the same language material again when you receive the activity from your friend. Students can either work in pairs, so one writes the activities for another, or they can work in groups of two. So one pair writes the activities for another pair, and this is completely preparation free. Okay, that doesn't mean that you need any extra preparation. This is something that you can come up on the spot. Also, it's a very good activity is when suddenly the lesson is not finished yet. You have 10 minutes before the bell rings and there's nothing to do, right? So this is, okay, I've got a task for you. I'd like you to write language tasks for one another. And students usually follow that game. They actually like it. Okay. Another sentence-based practice. This is a variation, I would say, of it. It doesn't include gaps, but the fact that it leads students from one exercise to another, it also puts different words into context. Okay. First, let's please. This is the language material that it focuses on. If you go. Obviously, you go somewhere, you meet someone or anyone, you live somewhere or anywhere, and you do something or anything. So, we will be doing a so-called substitution drill. So changing one word in a sentence with a new one, and then you don't need to write it down for you to say it out loud. Okay, so let's have a look how it works. Oops. Our first original sentence is the following: if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? And the students can answer this question. Then replace the word go with meet. If you could meet anywhere in the, if you could meet anyone in the world, who would you meet? Right? Look at this one. If you could meet anyone in the world, who would you meet? Then do. What will be the question? If you could do anything in the world, what would you do? And the last one, live. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live? So mind you that we are still this is still sentence-based practice. It puts the students into it shows students how to use certain words in the context of a sentence, but we are getting rid of the gaps, right? We are doing a substitution drill instead of gap completion. Okay, if you think that's a great task, you might, I don't know, I'm not sure if you guys are receiving this, the access to it after the webinar, but you can also take a picture with your phone or make a note. Okay, then. The next point, the next group of activities that I want to show you is patterns-based practice. So how can we help students practice phrases, collocations, and structures? One of my favorite activities would be scrambled sentences, okay? Because this is something, it's not, because what I'm trying to do here really is to find substitutions or find variations of a typical gap completion activity. Because if you tell students, complete the gaps with this, and then complete the gaps with this, and then complete the gaps with this, everybody will be bored after a while, right? So here are different examples which in fact practice the same ideas, but in a different ways. And scrambled sentences activities are just another example. When you're using Gateway, language checkpoint in any unit is a great resource or source of ideas, because what I want to show you again is for students, because okay, you can do this on your own, obviously, but then you probably have to either write it on the note on the blackboard and wait for students to rewrite, and this takes time. Or you have to make copies before the lesson, and it's also not always very convenient. If, however, you ask students to write scrambled sentences like this for their friends, so the idea is the same. Students writing language tasks for other students. My students like this, exactly. So if students like unscrambling the sentence, ask them, that's I think Katerina, if students like unscrambling the sentences, so perhaps they would also like to scramble them first for their friends. Okay, this is how it works. This is for grammar reference, and this is what this scrambling, unscrambling, and again, the processing comes twice, because the processing students have to process the material and the language twice. First when they make the activity, and then when they do it. Okay. Okay, another activity that I found, which is also based on different phrases. This is taken from what I have learned teaching. You can also it's also a good resource for different ideas. Look at this. Students can write on the board. This is something that I found for Valentine's Day. It teaches students phrases and collocations. What is it that I can do? What is it that I am? This is for, I would say, the beginning of, although, you know, whatever, this activity might seem very simple, but it all depends what the person writes. I love that I can, I don't know, use software for this, use design software is no longer a very easy, it's no longer a very easy language, okay? So I love that I am, and I love that I have, okay? And this is something that you can use obviously not only on Valentine's Day, but whenever you teach students can, have, and be, okay? Sometimes the difference will be this, or I am interested in, I hate, and I love, for instance. If you do it that way, I am interested in, I hate, I love, what you obviously start working on is verbs of like and dislikes, followed by gerund. I'm not sure how it works for Ukrainian students, but this is a typical mistakes that Polish learners of English make. Okay, so you can either, in order to help students with remembering which words are followed by gerunds, okay, like you may do this. So I love, I am interested in, I dislike, I hate, or I love, or whatever it is. Or you may also do this activity, okay? And there's another one that I'd like to show you. Let me just look at the time. Oh, sorry. Okay, it will. Okay. Let me just, so the next activity helps students with just that. The pattern that we are working on is, do you like reading? So like reading, we are trying to help students remember once and for all that after like, you use ing, okay? So now, the idea in this exercise is to take one very simple question or sentence, in this case is question, and add to it bits and pieces, making sure that students repeat the same sentence several times. So, do you like reading? Can be changed into step by step. What do you like reading? What do you like reading at night? What do you really like reading? What books do you really like reading at night? What kind of books do you really like reading at night? And you can continue like this. What are you interested in? Oh, sorry. What do you like watching? What do you like watching at weekends? What do you like watching? What kind of documentary films do you like watching? And so on and so forth. So mind you that here, what happens here is that we are teaching students the phrase like doing something in the context of a sentence. But if you ask students to repeat the same sentence 10 times, like do you like reading, do you like reading, do you like reading, this is boring. Doing this, okay, obviously adds a little bit of a challenge, but also makes students keep students' interest, because there is, it's more like, okay, so what is it where I can add something? Again, students treat this as a kind of a puzzle. Okay, now okay, let us now move on to a conversation-based practice. Again, let me start with Gateway, because I believe that well, I have to say it. What this course book does, the whole series really is really context-based teaching in its purest form. Look at this one. The phrasal verbs connected with sport. Look what happens, that they are not explained to the learners. Right here, she took up gymnastics when she was 7. You should always warm up before a match. Italy have knocked out England in the World Cup, and so forth. Right. So look, students are not given ready-made answers. They have to read the sentences which present the target language in context in order to figure out what they mean. That is, match the phrasal verbs with their definitions. But what is particularly important to me right now, especially that we are going to talk about conversation, is the following activity. Complete the sentences with the correct forms of phrasal verbs. 1. Ask your partner the questions. Do you ever work out to keep fit? Right? How often? If there's a match or competition in your school, do you join in, or do you just watch, and so on? This activity, see, remember when we talked about personalization, these are personal questions. These are questions about you and how you do sports on a daily basis. This is one very important thing. And this is a very nice, there's always information gap because of that. And you show students immediate relevance. But if you wanted to include some kind of either extra challenge or modify this activity slightly, I'd like to show you an activity called One Question Behind. This is from Mario Rinvolucri and Paul Pete, I don't remember now, Davis. The book is called Grammar Games, and it works in the following way. Students ask, you need a simple set of questions for that, because there is quite a lot of processing, quite a big processing demand on the learners anyway. Let me show you how it works. Students work in pairs, they ask each other questions, but student one answers the question before. So, for example, student one says, have you got a big or small circle of friends? No response. Do you see eye to eye with your parents? Well, I have a small circle of friends. See, one question behind, answering the previous question that the next student says. When you have an argument with somebody, do you find it easy to make up with them afterwards? The other says, well, I usually agree with my parents. Have you fallen out with your best friend? When I have an argument with someone, I usually wait for an apology, and so on. Can you see that? You answer the question which was one before. And with this, students can even look and read the questions together, but still there is always the aim of this activity to add extra challenge. Look at this one. With very simple questions, you can do it without looking at the questions. For instance, how old are you? Where do you live? I'm 40. Do you have brothers or sisters? In Bucharest. What do you do? No, I'm an only child, and so on. See, so you think about the question that you asked before, and so on. So for this, I would say that this is a task for stronger students who need extra challenge, who need to, do something extra in the lesson, who like to have fun with the language. Okay, then. So obviously, right? So this is a difficult task. But if you want something simpler, you want to put the phrases and sentences into the context of a conversation, you can do something like this. These are two activities from Gateway B2+. Make these requests for information or polite using the expressions in the speaking bank. So first, students prepare a set of words. You can work on the words that students already know from the book, different phrases. What happens in the next, this is important. Work with a partner, prepare a dialogue using the guide below. And the guide is given. In Gateway, the guide is given. The officer says, offer help to the customer. Ask for the times of trains in Newcastle. Ticket officer, give the time, and so on and so forth. If, however, your course book doesn't do it, you can make such a plan, such a template with your students, even in L1. So in Ukrainian, you say, okay, so what does the ticket officer say? All this and that. What does the customer say then? All this and that. You come up with a template. You can write it on the board without students rewriting it. And then you tell them, okay, guys, now write this conversation in English using these phrases or these forms or these words. This is what I wanted to say. So this is another activity which again should be helpful whichever course book you work with. Another conversation-based activity, and I'm actually hoping, yeah, I've got 5 more slides. I might prolong like by 5 minutes, but I'm almost there, I swear. So another activity that I wanted to show you is a class survey, right? In which students walk around the class and ask each other questions. So instead of having a conversation with the same person over and over again, so with the person sitting next to me all the time, students can walk around the class and talk to different people. very often those who they never actually talk to. And again, you will find lots of class surveys, ready-made class surveys like this online. But this is something that you have to print before, think about, find, and so on. And my experience as a teacher shows that whenever students receive a handout, they don't really take care about it, right? If, however, you tell your students, so write your own class survey, write your own questions using these words, for instance, okay? You can also give students a choice. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There are 12 words here. So now write 7 questions for a class survey, and everybody writes it in their own class, in their own notebook. This is something that will never, that won't get lost. You know, after the lesson, my students take the worksheet and throw it away. Notebook is something that they won't throw away, okay? In order to give students a choice, you give them 12 words and ask to write 7 questions. And then they can stand up and walk around the class asking students different questions. This is something that you can only show as an example. Okay, then. So this is conversation. Mind you that the conversation is still, conversation-based practice is still, to a certain extent, the manipulation of forms. Now it's time to move to a kind of more unrestricted. The un is in brackets because it is the activities that I want to show you are kind of restricted because, well, I want my students to use certain words or phrases or structures in what they say or write, okay? So it's almost free practice. The first activity that I wanted to show you is photo-based, picture-based. There is no better way for free practice of this unrestricted use than pictures. And the idea will be the same. You can obviously tell students, okay, look at the photo and describe the pictures, and then they will be using present continuous all the time. Maybe some clothes items because this takes place in a clothes shop. You can tell students, however, that, okay, so describe the picture, use 2 modal verbs. Oh, she must be very happy. This, the lady should buy the pink top from the back, for instance. So we've got must and should. What are the girls, another question that we might ask to induce particular words. What are the girls in the picture saying? And then you make phrases. Write what the girls in the picture are saying. Write now this. Use 1 sentence in present perfect and 1 sentence in second conditional. Oh, I've seen you before, the shop assistant might say, okay? Yes, I love your shop. If I had more money, I would come here every day. See, so this is all about, you know, being inventive and creative, but this is, it kind of, it leaves students just as free practice is supposed to give students, it gives students a lot of room for creativity and a lot of independence. You can also ask students to act out the conversation between the girls. Use present perfect, past simple, this and that, and names of clothes and so on. Okay, so this is speaking. And mind you that every single picture can be used in that way, right? Describe the picture using these elements. Use the words from page 25 to in your description, for instance. Or we are practicing about past simple, past continuous. Describe the picture, use at least 1 sentence with past simple and 1 sentence with past continuous, and so on. And last but not least, writing. Now, guys, do you remember your silly story from the very beginning of this webinar? What are, if you remember, yes, what are the 5 words that you were supposed to include? What were? Rabbit, banana, okay? Banana, pencil, this is a lot of, okay. Now let me tell you something. If I asked you at the beginning of this webinar to say, guys, now look at these 5 words and remember them. chances are that without writing them down, you would have forgotten. By the end of the webinar, you would have forgotten what the words are, okay? It is the context of a story that makes them memorable. Let me tell you how it works. This is my story. A rabbit came home after a busy day at school. He was hungry, so he had a banana. For a while, he was resting, looking out of the window at a tree, and he took out a pen. Then he took out the pencil and started doing his homework. And you know what? I started preparing this webinar for you 10 days ago. 10 days ago. Okay? And what happened is that when I came back to it 10 days later, it's like the words came to me instantly. Instantly. Why? Because I had the opportunity to put them into the context of a text. Writing something silly, free practice. Okay? So this only proves that, yes, context-based learning actually works. Now, a very short summary, a very short recap. We talked about 3 dimensions of language knowledge or language learning, depending on which perspective you look at it from. It is form, meaning, and use. My claim was that it is the use that is the most important. The language learning in context comes in sentences, phrases or collocations, a conversation, and this is controlled practice. And then speaking and writing, which is rather free practice. I also wanted to show you good pedagogical reasons. So why is it that context-based practice actually works? I believe that it is more difficult, so it includes extra challenge. Therefore, it's more memorable, and perhaps above all, is more communicative. And what I wanted to say at the end is that, you know, when we started building that brick or putting the bricks together, perhaps instead of just building a plain wall, we might actually build a gateway to a better world, or gateway to actual fluent language use. Thank you very much for your attention.
Karolina, thank you very much. Really, I'm not sure you saw all those warm comments in the chat box. The teachers find your ideas really very, very practical. Thank you very much. And when this quarantine ends, we're expecting for you in Kyiv, Ukraine. Шановні колеги, ще буквально 2-3 хвилиночки вашої уваги. Перше, хочу нагадати тим, хто приєднався трошечки пізніше, що сертифікати надійдуть всім, хто сьогодні був на вебінарі, на електронну пошту протягом 3 днів. Крім того, ми підготували для вас невеличкий сюрприз. Разом з сертифікатом у вас у листі будуть кілька запитань. І, надавши на них відповіді, ви отримаєте від нас практичну розробку уроку або з лексики, або з граматики для ваших учнів. Нагадаю, що Кароліна показувала сьогодні приклади з підручника Gateway. Ви бачите зараз на екрані, що і вчитель, і учні мають код доступу до цифрових ресурсів. І серед цих цифрових ресурсів те, що в умовах дистанційного навчання є, за думкою багатьох колег, досить корисним. Це онлайн-робочий зошит, коли учні можуть виконувати завдання вчителя, а вчитель автоматично отримує відповіді і результати. Так виглядає інтерфейс цього робочого зошиту. І хочу звернути вашу увагу, сьогодні Кароліна говорила про лексику і граматику. Звичайно, дистанційно, самостійно учні навряд чи зможуть опанувати граматичні явища. І в цьому величезна допомога того, чим курс Gateway є унікальним, це Flipped Classroom Videos. Я говорила про них більш докладно на попередньому вебінарі. Це відеопрезентації граматики. Тобто учні можуть самостійно подивитися відеопрезентацію стільки разів, скільки їм потрібно, а потім виконати вже з вами ті вправи, які ви їм скажете зробити. Це всі рівні курсу. У кожного учня є доступ до онлайн робочого зошиту, у кожного вчителя є доступ до онлайн робочого зошиту. Я дуже вдячна вам за вашу сьогоднішню роботу, за ці теплі слова, які ви писали на адресу того, що робила Кароліна. Ми намагаємося допомагати вчителям особливо активно в ці непрості часи. До нових зустрічей. Нагадаю ще один раз, сертифікати надійдуть вам на електронну пошту, яку ви вказували під час реєстрації на вебінар. Вони прийдуть протягом 3 днів. У листі, крім сертифікату, буде ще кілька запитань. І в тілі листа буде вказана адреса, на яку потрібно надіслати відповіді, якщо ви хочете отримати від нас практичні розробки ready to use. Thank you very much. І ще одне нагадування. На наступному тижні, 25 березня, у нас онлайн-конференція від одного з авторів курсу Get to 100. Ця конференція буде присвячена підготовці до ЗНО. Чекаємо на зустріч. На все добре. Хай щастить, будьте здорові.